Good morning and welcome to the second meeting in 2014 of the Health and Sport Committee. As usual, at this point, I would ask everyone in the room to switch off mobile phones and other wireless devices, as this sometimes can interfere with the meeting itself and with the sound system. In saying that, I should also point out that some members and officials are using tablet devices instead of hard copies of their papers. I have apologies from Dr Richard Simpson and Malcolm Chisholm joins us once again as the Labour substitute. There is only one item on the agenda today, the first day of Stage 2 of Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill. You should have a copy of the bill and the martial lists of amendments and the groupings. Today, we can go no further than the end of section 33, and we discussed with the committee that we would, at appropriate time, in and around about 12:30, that would be a drop-dead date, depending on our progress. I think that we've got some time next week to complete our business. Can I now welcome the Cabinet Secretary, Alex Neil, and his officials to the committee. Welcome back to you all. And can I just move now to call Amendment 1 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with other amendments as shown in the groupings. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 1 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you very much indeed, Convener. The amendments in this group in my name make a drafting change to the term integration plan, amending the term to integration scheme. This change is presentational. The term integration scheme reflects the purpose of the document setting out the integration arrangements which must be prepared under section 1 or 2 by the Health Board and local authority. Further, stakeholders raise concerns about the potential for confusion over which duty applied to whom and for what purpose in relation to the integration plan and strategic plan. I am happy to respond to stakeholder concerns and make this presentational change, and I therefore move Amendment 1.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Malcolm Chisholm.
I can see why you've made this change because of the structure of the bill. Obviously, you start with the plans and then you go on to the delivery. But I don't know whether one of your amendments incorporates this or not. Sorry, I haven't checked every single one. But when you're talking about the scheme, the title for Section 4 is Integration Planning Principles. I haven't noticed an amendment in relation to that because it seems a bit awkward that you've changed everything to scheme, but you still have planning principles. And then when it comes to the strategic plan at 24, you have delivery principles. So there's just a certain awkwardness there. And I wonder whether, if there isn't an amendment, whether you need to have a further amendment to align so that all references to plan are actually with the later part of the bill rather than the scheme.
Any other members? Can I call on the Cabinet Secretary to respond and sum up, please?
Yeah, it's a very fair point Mr Chisholm makes. We'll look at it and see if we need to put an additional amendment in at stage 3.
The question is then that Amendment 1 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 2 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. Call Amendment 3 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with other amendments as shown in the groupings. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 3 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Can I say this is a fairly long explanation, although it's necessary to put this on the record, I think. Amendments 3, 8, 56, 74 and 79 deal with payments to an integration authority. These amendments make provision for circumstances where the functions that a health board is delegating to an integration authority include services that are carried out in a hospital that provides for the areas of 2 or more local authorities. For example, the hospital is a large hospital such as Edinburgh Royal Infirmary or Glasgow Southern General. Flexible use of budgets is key to improving outcomes, and the principle of an integrated budget is key to successful integration. It is also of key importance to the policy intention of integration that the appropriate parts of acute hospital budgets and activity are included within integrated strategic planning. Discussions with particularly NHS stakeholders have nevertheless indicated that inclusion of some hospital budgets in the physical payments to the Integration Authority could be problematic. Hospitals that provide a substantial part of their services to the populations of 2 or more local authority areas, i.e. budgets for large hospitals, form an important common resource, and dividing up and paying out their budgets to numerous integration authorities could undermine their operational management. At the same time, in order to preserve the integrity of the policy and the intention of the bill, it is important that strategic planning includes the hospital capacity used by the population of the Integration Authority. All appropriate aspects of the health and social care resource spent on the Integration Authority's population must be included within the scope of the strategic plan so that it can be used to total best effect. These amendments provide that health boards are not required to physically disaggregate the budgets for large hospitals that serve several communities. Instead, the health board can set aside the appropriate portion of the large hospital budget, and its use is then directed by the Integration Authority via the strategic plan. Amendment 8 provides a definition for large hospitals. Amendment 146 from Malcolm Chisholm appears to introduce a similar alternative mechanism for local authorities to make notional payments to integration joint boards for delegated functions, although I am advised that other changes to the bill would also be needed to achieve this effect. Its intended effect appears to be that local authorities could also set aside budgets whose use is to be directed by the Integration Authority. I gather, however, that Malcolm Chisholm's intention was in fact to amend the provision about payments as it applies to health board budgets rather than local authority budgets. The effect of such an amendment would be that the health board could either make a payment to the Integration Authority for all of its delegated functions, not just large hospital budgets, or could set aside that notional amount for the direction of the Integration Authority via the strategic plan. The key point here is that my amendments relate to one portion only of health board budgets. The budgets for large hospitals that provide services to more than 2 local authority areas. Health board budgets covering, for example, community hospitals will be paid to the Integration Authority and will not be set aside in this way. I do not support extending the notional budget principle to other aspects of health board budgets, as Mr Chisholm has proposed, or indeed to local authority budgets. Such a change would send a very unwelcome signal to health boards and local authorities about the Integration Authority's duties and responsibilities with regard to strategic planning. It is vitally important to the success of our policy intention that the authority of the Integration Authority in relation to the strategic planning process and the funding that underpins it is absolutely clear. The amendments made in my name provide the right balance of requiring actual payment with practical flexibility in relation to managing large hospitals. Amendments 3 and 4 deal with the content of integration schemes, which must include the method of determining resources to be paid to the Integration Authority and the method of determining any resources that are set aside by the Health Board for large hospital budgets. These amendments also improve the terminology used in the bill regarding budgets. Method of calculating is replaced with method of determining, which better reflects the policy intention for integrated budgets, which is that payment should be determined based on a regular process of local discussion and consideration, rather than on a prescriptive formula carried forward from year to year. This change in terminology is also seen in Amendments 54, 58, 69 and 76, which relate to payments to the Integration Joint Board, and in Amendments 156 and 157, which cover revision of integration schemes. Amendments 56 and 74 apply to the Integration Joint Board and Lead Agency, with the local authority as lead agent models, respectively. They have the same effect as each other, providing that health boards must set aside an amount to be determined in accordance with the methods set out in the integration scheme for large hospital functions. Amendments 57 and 75 provide for the requirement in health boards to make payments either to an integration joint board or a local authority acting as the lead agency for delegated functions where no large hospital functions are delegated, or where they are and the health board has decided to include them in the payment. Amendment 79 provides for the integration authority to be able to direct the health board on the use of large hospital budgets in line with the strategic plan. We expect integration to achieve a shift in the balance of investment in institutional and non-institutional care. Strategic plans will set out changes in the use of resources of large hospitals. We would expect strategic plans to set out how integration authorities will reduce the use of large hospital services for the population. At the same time, in some circumstances, it is possible that strategic plans will set out an intention to use more of some services provided in large hospitals. It is possible that in either circumstance, a planned reduction or increase in use of large hospital services will not in fact be realised, despite what is set out in the strategic plan. Where this happens, an adjustment will be needed to the payments between the Health Board and the Integration Authority to reflect the change in resource use. If a planned reduction in use of large hospital services is realised by the Integration Authority, Amendment 79 enables an Integration Authority to require a Health Board to pay to it savings realised by the Health Board in relation to services delivered to a large hospital, so that the Integration Joint Board may reallocate the money to interventions to reduce hospitalisation. Similarly, if a planned increase in use of large hospital services is not realised, Amendment 79 enables an Integration Authority to require a Health Board to pay back to it money for services that were not used. On the other hand, if the Integration Authority uses more of the large hospital services than was planned for, Amendment 79 also requires the Integration Authority to pay money to the Health Board as it would normally have to when directing under Section 22. Amendments 71 and 78 are concerned with payments to local authorities in respect of delegated functions. The bill provides for different models of integration, including circumstances in which more than one local authority is covered by an integration scheme with one health board. Amendments 71 and 78 provide for the situation in which more than one local authority is covered by the same integration scheme as a health board, and a lead agency arrangement is put in place in which one of the local authorities is the lead agency. In such a circumstance, these amendments provide that the delegating local authority must make a payment to the local authority that is acting as the lead agency in relation to each delegated local authority function. I would like to note briefly that I am particularly grateful to all participants in our Integrated Resources Advisory Group and our National Steering Group on Joint Strategic Commissioning for their contribution to this work. And I would invite I move Amendment 3, and I would invite Malcolm Chisholm not to move Amendment 146.
Cabinet Secretary, I call on Malcolm Chisholm to speak to Amendment 146 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. I always intended 146 to be a probing amendment, so that there is not any, and as you've already indicated, I actually made a mistake in putting it against line 26 rather than 29, because my concern was subsection 3 of clause 13, but since it's a probing amendment, I'm sure it's not a cardinal offence to have put it in the wrong place, because I still want to make the points that I made. It does seem to me this is a very important group of amendments, because it takes us to two of the central issues of the bill, which really featured prominently during stage one consideration. Firstly, the funding arrangements, and secondly, the balance of power, if I can put it that way, between the Integration Authority and the Local Authority and Health Board who form the strategic plan. It did seem to me to be a problem with the bill as formulated, that it could have taken us back to the bureaucratic arrangements of commissioning, because it says in the bill the Health Board must make a payment to the Integration Joint Board, and then presumably the Integration Joint Board would have had to make a payment back for services that it commissioned. So I did think that was a problem. And clearly the complex amendments that the Cabinet Secretaries brought forward do try to deal with that. I mean, I have to say, I do think it's a bit unsatisfactory that the detail of the funding only came out after the stage 1 consideration because we had no chance to question officials about that at that particular stage. And we were all very surprised when we received a note saying that I think it was at least half of the Health Board budget would be handed over, if that was the language that was used at the time, and that 3/4 of over 75 emergency care. I'm not saying whether that's right or wrong. I'm just saying we were surprised that the extent of financial delegation was as great as that. So that's my little moan out of the road. We have now detailed amendments. I think I and my colleagues would not be minded to oppose those. I think we might want to reserve the right to examine them further before stage 3 and see if they do meet all the concerns. But they do seem to avoid the pitfalls of reintroducing the old-style commissioning arrangements. The language of set-aside, I think, is very similar to what I was suggesting in terms of notional payment. I think I was just saying payment or notional payment, so I don't accept the criticism that the Cabinet Secretary made that this implied that the notional payments were for everything. It just meant that there was the option of a notional payment as well as a genuine payment. Now, I think the other issue of the balance of power is also illuminated by these amendments, and I think Amendment 79 is quite significant in that regard. Again, I don't particularly have a strong view on this, but I would draw the conclusion from Amendment 79 that it's very much going to be the integration authority that is calling the shots on this in terms of directing health boards about what they should be doing with their acute hospitals. So I think that's the intention, and again, I would want to reflect further on that and perhaps listen to what health boards have to say about that. But it does seem to me, because again, that was one of the issues that came up at stage 1, exactly how much power was being invested in the integration authority. And it seems to me in Amendment 79 that it's quite clear that the key decisions will be made by that integration authority, and they will have the power to direct health boards. So I and my colleagues, I don't think, are minded to vote against your amendments today. I would certainly, since it was always a probing amendment, be very happy to withdraw mine, but I think we would reserve the right to scrutinise all of this central part of the bill further at stage 3.
Any other members? No? Can the Cabinet Secretary wind up, please?
Just briefly, Convener, can I thank Malcolm Chisholm for his contribution, which was very helpful indeed. I'm happy to meet with Malcolm and any other member of the committee before we get to stage 3 if they require further clarification on what our intention is in terms of the detail. I do realise this is a very complex area, and obviously I want to be happy that members are satisfied before we get to stage 3 that what we're doing is absolutely the right thing to do, which obviously I think it is. I'm very much welcome Malcolm Chisholm's offer to withdraw his amendment. It's not very often Mr Chisholm makes a mistake.
Charm will get you everywhere, Cabinet Secretary. Before we move to our question Amendment 3, can I put the question on Amendment 2, which was already debated and moved by the Cabinet Secretary for committee agreement? Are the committee agreed on Amendment 2 moved by the Cabinet Secretary? Thank you. I then move now to the question that is Amendment 3 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I call Amendment 4 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 3?
Formally moved.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 4 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 202 in the name of Rhoda Grant, grouped with Amendment 203. Rhoda Grant to move Amendment 202 and speak to both amendments in the group.
Can I move Amendment 202? I've tabled a number of amendments that seek to embed co-production into the bill. Clearly, the reason for the bill is to improve service to service users and their carers. Integration means that they should receive a seamless service. but I also believe that we should all strive to involve them in devising these services that they receive in order to enable them to live fulfilling lives. Amendment 202 seeks to embed co-production into the plan for integration. The integration plan sets out how the authority will work and how all actions will flow therefrom. By asking the authority as part of this plan to make arrangements for the participation of service users, carers and their representatives ensures that co-production is required, and these principles will flow forward into frontline service delivery. The amendment also ensures that any service users will be supported in their involvement. Subparagraph 4, 5 and 6 ensure that staff are embedded to participate and also allows the authority to use expertise from other organisations in the third sector or within the community as it sees fit. This amendment also highlights the need for accountability for the use of resources. It ensures that services will be monitored and arrangements made to improve quality, safety and standards of service. This is an issue that runs through other amendments and was sought by a number of consultees to the bill, including the RCN. I believe these principles need to be made clear as part of the integration plan. I also speak in support of Amendment 203 in the name of Nanette Milne, which seeks that an integrated plan makes arrangements for a single complaint system. I've also tabled an Amendment 217 that asks Scottish ministers to set up the integrated complaint system. My amendment also ensures that the integrated authority is subject to the Public Service Ombudsman, keeping it in line with its constituent authorities. These amendments together will ensure that there will be Scotland-wide guidelines on how complaints should be handled and ensure that joint boards implement this as part of their integration plan.
Thank you. Can I call Nanette Milne to speak on Amendment 203 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. My amendments focus on ensuring that service users and unpaid carers are central to planning and shaping integrated services, and to ensuring a strong voice for the third sector in joint strategic commissioning and locality planning, as well as ensuring a focus on personal outcomes for service users. If integration is to produce seamless services for people who use them, then health and social care partnerships, I think, should be obliged to provide a clear, simple route into a complaints process to ensure that the needs and experience of service users are listened to and learned from, which should help to drive improvement going forward. Complaints processes are also a key accountability mechanism, helping people to access their rights in relation to health and social care. So Amendment 203 amends the bill to include reference to ensuring effective access to a complaints system, and I'm obviously happy to move Amendment 203 and also to support Amendment 202.
Thank you. Any other members? No. Cabinet Secretary?
Convener, Amendments 202 and 203 seek to place requirements on health boards and local authorities to include additional items within their integration scheme. I'll begin with the items listed in Amendment 202. I would draw the committee's attention to the policy statement that outlines the regulations I intend to make under the power contained in Section 13E. Within these regulations, I will set out in more detail than is appropriate on the face of the bill the arrangements that must be put in place to ensure, firstly, that there is effective monitoring of integrated resources and payments, and secondly, how clinical and care governance will assure the quality, safety and standards of the services developed. These regulations will therefore cover the matters addressed in subsections DA and DB of Amendment 202. The strategic planning and locality planning processes that integration authorities must put in place will determine how integrated services must be planned and delivered. Scottish ministers have included within sections 26, 27 and 32 of the bill a requirement to consult and take account of the views expressed by a wider range of stakeholders than this amendment would require. The bill therefore already makes provision for the consultation of stakeholders that goes beyond that in subsection DC of Amendment 202. It is not proportionate to require in primary legislation the participation of those listed in Amendment 202 over other key parties and stakeholders. I do not consider that a requirement in the integration scheme to develop a strategy to support stakeholders in the planning and delivery of services is the best approach. I also have concerns that Amendment 202 limits this strategy to a small number of stakeholders. It does not, for example, include GPs who equally might need support in developing their skills to strategically plan services across the area of an integration authority. Rather, I intend to set out within statutory guidance that this support should be provided to all participants in the various activities required in the bill. This will ensure that all participants are offered support to fully engage in the planning and delivery of services, and that this support can be tailored to each activity rather than just provided for in a high-level strategy. Turning to Amendment 203, this seeks to require integration schemes to provide a single point of entry for complaints that fall within the scope of integration. I fully recognise that the current system for social work complaints is no longer up to date or fit for purpose, and we've been working to produce a new system which will be more accessible, allow complaints to be completed far faster, and to produce a coordinated response for the complainant. We will bring forward in due course, under existing powers of Scottish ministers, to make these changes in secondary legislation, which I would expect will satisfy what Nanette Milne quite rightly intended with this amendment to introduce. The Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill is not the appropriate legislative vehicle to make changes to the complaint system, especially when we've not consulted on them as part of the bill. I would urge Rhoda Grant and Nanette Milne, therefore, to withdraw Amendments 202 and 203.
Cabinet Secretary. Rhoda Grant to wind up. Press or withdraw.
I wish to press Amendment 202 because I truly believe that if we are going to adopt the principles of co-production, that doesn't just mean consulting people, it actually means involving service users in those decisions. And if you involve them in the integration scheme, that means that they have influence on how the work of the bill progresses through the various stages. So I would look to pressing that amendment. Could I just say, in answer to Cabinet Secretary's query about GPs, they would be included in this under section DC 6, where local authorities and health boards could involve any other person. I know that GPs are not employees of the health board, much to my regret, but they would be involved under the final clause. So I would seek to press this amendment because I feel it really is important to the bill and how it works and how we involve service users and carers in their own care to design services.
Well, the question, therefore, is that Amendment 202 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The members are not agreed, so there will be a division. Those in favour of the amendment, please show. Those against the amendment, please show. Those abstaining? No abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. We now call Amendment 203 in the name of Nanette Milne, already debated with Amendment 202. Nanette Milne, to move or not move.
Thank you, Convener. I appreciate the Cabinet Secretary's understanding of the reason for bringing these amendments. Anyway, at this point, I will withdraw my amendment, reserving my position for stage 3. So not moved.
The amendment is not moved. We therefore move to call Amendment 5 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with Amendments 6, 9, 140 to 142, 10 and 200. Can I point out at this time, if Amendment 9 is agreed to, then we cannot call Amendments 140, 141 and 142 under the preemptive rule. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 5 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. The Scottish Government has been clear from the outset that the policy of integration applied to health and social care functions. At introduction, the bill permitted any local authority function to be included in the integrated arrangement with health functions, subject to provision made by regulations restricting the range of local authority functions that could be delegated. This group of amendments changes the approach so that the range of local authority functions that can be delegated is set out in the bill itself, in the proposed new schedule. Turning to Amendment 5, Subsection 4A provides for local authorities to delegate functions that are conferred on local authorities by the acts listed in the schedule in Amendment 10. In policy terms, these can be considered as effectively social care functions. Subsection 4C provides for Scottish ministers to prescribe from that list the functions that must be delegated by a local authority, but only insofar as those functions relate to adults. So Scottish ministers can only require the delegation of adult social care functions, leaving the delegation of other functions in the schedule to local determination. Subsection 4B provides for health boards to delegate functions prescribed by Scottish ministers. Subsection 4D provides for Scottish ministers to prescribe the functions of a health board that must be delegated where an integration joint board is established or where the local authority is a lead agency. Again, Scottish ministers can only prescribe functions insofar as those functions relate to adults. So again, Scottish ministers can only require the delegation of adult health care, leaving the delegation of other health functions to local determination. Subsection 4E sets out the requirements in which an integration model provided for in 14D, in which the health board and local authority are both lead agencies, is agreed. The local authority must delegate social care functions in relation to adults, or the health board must delegate health functions in relation to adults. This ensures that integration of adult health and social care functions is achieved. Subsections 4F and 4G make provisions similar to that contained in 16C and D of the Bill as introduced. Scottish ministers may set out the functions of health boards and local authorities that must or may not be delegated under certain circumstances. Subsections 4F and 4G provide some flexibility for Scottish ministers to set out functions that go together and to set out those that don't go together. Subsection 4H enables Scottish ministers to remove enactments from the schedule should that be considered appropriate in future. The exercise of this power is subject to affirmative procedure. Amendments 6 and 9 are consequential as a result of Amendment 5. Amendment 10 provides for the schedule that creates a list of functions conferred on local authorities that constitute social care under the Bill. Amendment 200 sets out that regulations made under Section 14H will be subject to the affirmative procedure. Turning to Amendments 140, 141 and 142 from Mr Chisholm, which are preempted by Amendment 9 in my name. Amendment 9 already removes the requirement for Scottish ministers to prescribe the functions that may not be delegated. However, it is important that Scottish ministers have the flexibility to prescribe when functions may not be delegated in certain circumstances, not least because I wish to ensure that this legislation is future-proof. That is, it's able to keep pace with the changes in technology, practice and service design and redesign. Providing a certain service in a hospital will be entirely right for some individuals. However, for others, the most appropriate place may be in their own home or in a community setting. The Bill and Amendment 5 provides for this legitimate flexibility, and Amendment 142 would remove it. I therefore cannot support Amendments 140, 141 and 142. I move Amendment 5 and would ask Mr Chisholm not to move Amendments 140, 141 and 142.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary, and call Malcolm Chisholm to speak on Amendment 140 and other amendments in the group.
I must say I'm struggling to follow the Cabinet Secretary's line of argument there, because I would have thought my amendments give the maximum amount of flexibility. When I read Section 1 of the Bill, I thought it was rather overdone, rather complex. But then when I saw the amendments, I realised that, in fact, it was simplicity itself compared to the amendments that have been brought forward by the Cabinet Secretary to the day. I can't possibly see how he is arguing in favour of flexibility when he is putting a schedule to the bill which lists in fine detail those parts of local government legislation that may be subject to being delegated. And of course, that in itself removes all flexibility. I would have thought the minimum change that he could make would be to ensure that the content of that schedule was in regulations rather than on the face of the bill. But I still have to be persuaded that all this level of detail is necessary in the first place. I thought the conclusion that we derived from our discussions at stage 1 was that there would be certain functions that had to be delegated, and therefore it seemed to me that it would be adequate simply to say in the bill, these are the functions that must be delegated, and to leave it to the good sense and local determination of health boards and local authorities to decide if they want to add to that list. So that would be the principled argument for my position. I think there's also a practical argument, because I know that health boards and local authorities are concerned that they may be delayed in their wish to hand over powers to the Integration Authority while they wait for regulations. So all that they need to know is what must be delegated, and the rest surely can be left to local determination. Now, if I'm missing something there in terms of the requirements of legislation, and if that's impossible, then I will accept the Cabinet Secretary's argument, but I cannot say that I'm persuaded by any of the arguments that he has put forward hitherto. So I'll just have to listen to his winding up and then really make a snap decision on whether to press the amendments or not. But if I do, since this is the only time I'll be allowed to speak, if I do at the end of the day withdraw these amendments, it will be subject to the same caveat that I intimated before, that on further consideration we may wish to revisit this at stage 3.
Any other members? Rhoda Grant.
Some concerns about those amendments. I mean, the amendments are hugely technical, quite difficult to scrutinise. One of the issues put to me is the transition between child and adult services, which is a big issue that hasn't really been covered as we talk about the bill. And I'm wondering if those amendments in any way prohibit an integrated transition between child and adult services. I would also say that in my own region, Highland Council and Highland Health Board have a different integration model where children's services have been transferred to the local authority, and I wonder if there's anything in this amendment that would prohibit other authorities taking that same line. So I'm looking for a bit of reassurance, I dare say, but also some reassurance for those who have the transition issues between child and adult services, which are fraught with difficulty at the moment, and if this makes it even worse, then that would be a retrograde step.
Any other members? No. Call on the Cabinet Secretary to wind up, please.
Can I say, Convener, I think we're trying to get to exactly the same place, Mr Chisholm and myself, in terms of his amendments. We're just doing it in a slightly different way. Can I clarify a number of things, first of all? First of all, can I clarify that in the bill, very clearly we will state what must be the responsibility of the Integration Authority, but also the Integration Authority, by agreement with the Health Board and the local authority, can take on any of the relevant additional functions that they may wish to do. And in fact, in a number of the partnerships already operating, such as West Lothian, they are already doing so. For example, Children's Services is a very good example. Can I just clarify for Rhoda Grant, there is no restriction in this bill whatsoever to any partnership taking on the additional responsibility of children's services. And again, in the informal, non-statutory partnerships that are already up and running, that's already happening in a number of them. And there's absolutely no restriction. Indeed, my own personal view is that it would make sense to do so in quite a number of circumstances.
The Cabinet Secretary is winding up. There's no opportunity for debate at this stage.
In quite a number of circumstances. The other point I would make is we did have representations from local government that the current wording of the bill was too wide and in fact did not clarify the definition of social care services and social care functions. And their concern was the wording was so wide it could have taken in any range of responsibilities which are actually above and beyond what is intended in the bill, and therefore I agreed that more definition on the face of the bill was required to allay those concerns. So that is the reasoning behind the amendments. We're trying to get to the same place, which is a very clear definition of what must be done by the integrated authorities, what may be done in addition to that by the integrated authorities, depending on local decision making. And as I say, there's total flexibility there. It is really, if the Health Board and the local authority agree to place any additional non-statutory requirement and to provide those services through the integrated body, they're entirely free to do so. Can I say, again, Convener, I've already offered to meet Mr Chisholm and anyone else in the committee for further discussions before we get to stage 3, and I would be happy to include the discussions on this particular area of policy, because we're absolutely sure we're doing the right thing, and we're also taking our local authority colleagues with us on this, which is extremely important for the success of the entire project.
The question is then that Amendment 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendments 6, 7 and 8, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. I invite the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 6 to 8 en bloc.
Move on block, Convener.
Thank you. Can I now put the question to members, any member object to a single question be put on Amendment 68? No? Thank you. The question is then that Amendments 6 to 8 are agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. We now call Amendment 9 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated, with Amendment 5. And can I remind members at this point that if Amendment 9 is agreed to, you cannot call Amendments 140, 141 and 142, which are preempted. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
The question is then that Amendment 9 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is that Section 1 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Call Amendment 10 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 5. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. The question is then that Amendment 10 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Call Amendment 11 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with Amendments 39, 40, 44, 49, 83, 120, 191 and 195. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 11 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Group 5 contains minor and technical amendments in my name. Section 2 addresses requirements to put in place integration arrangements in Health Board areas that cover more than one local authority area. Amendment 11 removes some text which is now considered to be redundant. The effect on the bill is unchanged. Amendment 39 is a drafting amendment to ensure that the requirement to consult the constituent authorities on the appointment of the Chief Officer is specific to the appropriate constituent authorities of the Integration Joint Board. Amendment 40 removes the definition of a constituent authority from Section 10. A separate definition of this is inserted by amendment under Section 43. Amendment 44, 49 and 120 are drafting amendments to provide for consistency in the use of the term constituent authorities in relation to an integration joint board. The amendment achieves more consistent use of terminology in the drafting of the bill. Amendment 191 and 195 provides for a definition to the use of the term constituent authority or constituent authorities. This term refers to the local authority or local authorities and Health Board as parties to an integration scheme in pursuance of which an integration joint board has been established. And Amendment 195 provides for where the use of constituent authority is to be used. Amendment 83 seeks to broaden the duty of cooperation in relation to integration schemes. Current drafting of the duty is narrow, making reference to what could be interpreted as an exhaustive list of resources. I believe it would be clearer and more effective if the duty of cooperation were expanded to cover all shared resources. This will better ensure effective and efficient use of all resources and reduce conflicting demand in the delivery of services. I therefore move Amendment 11, Convener.
Thank you. Any members? No. Cabinet Secretary, I don't think there's any need to wind up. The question is then that Amendment 11 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I now call Amendment 12 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1, and ask the Cabinet Secretary to move formally?
Formally moved.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 12 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Can I call Amendment 13 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1?
Formally moved.
Thank you. Cabinet Secretary, formally moved. The question is then that Amendment 13 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I call Amendment 14 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and a group on its own. Cabinet Secretary to move and speak to the amendment.
Convener, Section 2 addresses requirements to put in place integration arrangements in health board areas that cover more than one local authority area. Amendment 14 ensures that all adult health and social care functions that are prescribed as being required to be included in an integrated arrangement are held by a single body. Integration must result in service planning and provision that is integrated from the perspective of the service user. We will not achieve that position if adult health and social care functions are planned for and delivered by different bodies. It is therefore vital that the bill ensures that all integrated functions are held by one body. As originally published, this was not a requirement of the bill. This meant that it would have been possible for a health board and 2 or more local authorities to split up adult health and social care functions by delegating them to more than one local authority in a multi-council health board area. This amendment ensures that that course of action, which would have seriously undermined the policy intention of integration, is not possible. I therefore move Amendment 14.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Any members wish to? No? No need to wind up, Cabinet Secretary.
You can read that.
The question is then that Amendment 14 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I call Amendments 15, 16 and 17, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. And I invite the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 15 to 17 in block.
Move on block, Convener.
Ask whether any member objects to a single question be put on Amendments 15 to 17. No objection. The question is then that Amendment 15 to 17 are agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. We call now, the question is then that Section 2 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. We now call Amendment 18 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 18 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I now call Amendment 204 in the name of Rhoda Grant and a group on its own? Rhoda Grant to speak, move and speak to the amendment.
I move Amendment 204. The purpose of this amendment is to ensure that the integrated authority also has regard to the community planning process. If we genuinely want to integrate services responsive to the needs of local communities, then we must also integrate that with other local planning processes. This recognises that health and care service operate within the wider sphere of public service and have to contribute to the fulfilment of single outcome agreements. While integrating services is about improving the experience of service users and creating efficiencies, these services will also need to play their part in meeting the obligations of their partner authorities with regard to existing legislation. This amendment would mean stronger connections would be made between the community planning agenda, which I think is important to the integration of all services.
Any other members? No. Cabinet Secretary.
Convener, the bill requires health boards and local authorities to take account of the integration planning principles and the national health and wellbeing outcomes when preparing an integration scheme. Rhoda Grant's Amendment 204 seeks to add community planning outcomes to that list. The Government is bringing forward a community empowerment bill which will include integration authorities as bodies that must participate in community planning along with health boards, local authorities and others. A requirement to include integration authorities in community planning itself is much the stronger way to ensure the proper place of integrated health and social care in community planning, rather than referring to community planning outcomes which do not at present exist in law. I invite Rhoda Grant to agree that the Scottish Government's position in relation to community planning and integration is stronger than her proposal, and to withdraw Amendment 204.
The Grant to wind up, press or withdraw.
I would seek possibly in the interim between stage 2 and stage 3 to have further information from the Cabinet Secretary regarding when the Community Empowerment Bill will come into force, and whether that will be before this bill comes into force, because I think there may be an overlap, but waiting for that clarification, I will withdraw the amendment.
Thank you. The question is then that... yeah. Rhoda Grant has withdrawn. Yeah. The question is then that Amendment 204 be agreed to. Are we all...
She's withdrawn that one.
All right, yeah. So of course. Thank you. So intent to press on here. The question is then that Section 3 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. So, call Amendment 19 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with other amendments as shown in the groupings. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 19 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Can I say, Convener, this is again quite a long contribution, but it has to be done, I'm afraid. Firstly, I would like to put on record my appreciation to all the stakeholders involved in the development of the integration principles. The principles underpin the bill and provide for a person-centred focus and reflect the key cornerstones of effective integration. The integration planning principles provide for matters that health boards and local authorities must take into account when preparing an integration scheme. Their purpose is to ensure that when planning for their integrated arrangements, health boards and local authorities do so from the perspective of and for the benefit of the service user, rather than for organisational or administrative convenience. The integration delivery principles provide for matters that integration authorities must take into account when preparing a strategic plan. Their purpose is to ensure that when planning services using the totality of health and social care spend, integration authorities do so from the perspective of and for the benefit of the service user, rather than based on historical service provision. Amendments 19, 21, 22, 23, 26, 97, 99, 100, 101 and 104 in my name provide a drafting change to the term used in sections 4 and 25 from recipients to service users. I believe the term service users is more appropriate, as it more accurately provides for more active engagement and choice by persons who use health and social care services, rather than as passive recipients of services. Further technical amendments 20 and 98 in my name will ensure that the language of the bill does not imply that there is a single way that integrated services can be planned. Turning to Amendments 19A, 205, 207, 97A, 224, 226 in Malcolm Chisholm's name, I acknowledge the concern raised by stakeholders that the bill should take a human rights-based approach and to reflect the principles of independent living. Whilst I recognise the aim of stakeholders, this committee will already be aware of the requirement for all acts of the Scottish Parliament to comply with human rights as enshrined in the European Convention on Human Rights. It is therefore not necessary for this to be repeated in the bill. Further, in considering the use of the term independent living, while I accept and agree that it is important to ensure these principles and ideals are reflected in standards of planning, delivery and design of services, terms such as independent living are by their very nature potentially subject to change or differing interpretation. The integration principles must equally apply to all users of health and social care services covered by the bill, not only vulnerable or disabled people. Amendments 24 and 102 in my name, I believe, reflect the concerns of stakeholders in this regard. They require the Health Board and the local authority, in taking account of the integration planning principles, to reflect the fundamentals of the rights of service users and the principles of independent living. They will ensure a high standard of quality of service and protect and improve the safety of users of health and social care services. Amendment 143, in the name of Aileen MacLeod, adds the requirements of safety and quality to the list of matters that health boards and local authorities must take into account when preparing their integration scheme. Fiona MacLeod's Amendment 143, Aileen MacLeod's Amendment 143, copies across the effect in part of Amendment 102 in my name to the integration delivery principles, so that the same point is made in both sets of principles. I am very sympathetic to Ms MacLeod's proposed amendment on this point, and therefore I am happy to accept Amendment 143. Together, Amendments 102 and 143 require improvement in the quality of services and forego the need for Amendment 228 in the name of Rhoda Grant. Furthermore, a quality service is not only based on the amount of time given to service users. Best practice guidance is the place for such matters, not principles in primary legislation. Turning to Amendments 206 and 225 in the name of Nanette Milne, I believe that this requirement is properly addressed by the requirement in health boards and local authorities to take account of the particular needs of service users, which can be fairly readily quantified by health boards and local authorities. Health boards and local authorities, in the consideration of the needs of individuals, must already take into account the specific circumstances as part of a holistic, personalised approach to care. Health boards and local authorities are already subject to statutory requirements and guidance in relation to assessment. However, given the importance of considering individuals' needs within an integrated approach to care, I intend to provide statutory guidance on this matter. The guidance will provide further support to health boards and local authorities to ensure that their understanding of need is appropriate. In terms of individual choice, it is important to distinguish between the requirements placed on local authorities by the Social Care Self-Directed Support Scotland Act 2013 to provide choice and control over social care services, and the purpose of this bill, which is to bring together the responsibilities, accountability, delivery and planning for health and social care services. Choice and control cannot equally apply to all service users in all circumstances and to all health and social care services under the bill. The integration planning and delivery principles, importantly, do require the Health Board, Local Authority and Integration Authority to consider the needs of service users and to plan for integration and deliver services from the perspective of the service user. I therefore cannot support Amendments 209 and 230 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm. I am, however, sympathetic to the intention of Rhoda Grant's Amendment 223 to Section 25, which I believe is intended to broaden the circumstances when the integration delivery principles apply. However, I believe that Amendment 223 conflicts with the purpose in 25(1)(a), which is to ensure that services are provided in a way that improves the well-being of service users. Applying the principles to how services are commissioned conflicts with ensuring that the services are provided for the benefit of the service user, in other words, are planned and delivered in a person-centred way. Furthermore, the Scottish Government has already issued guidance to partners on strategic commissioning for integration of health and social care, and this will be revised as part of implementation of the bill. I would therefore ask Rhoda Grant not to move Amendment 223. Rhoda Grant's Amendment 227 requires services to be provided in a way that takes account of the needs of the service user moving between two local authority areas. The basis for the local authority providing a service to a service user is based on their physical presence in that local authority's area, so a local authority cannot begin to provide services until the service user is physically present in that area. We are aware that it can be difficult for people to move if they're unsure of whether the care services that they will need will be in place by the time they move. We have therefore developed and have in place protocols to encourage local authorities to enter into transitional arrangements to help facilitate moves. We will continue to work with COSLA and key stakeholders to ensure that local authorities are encouraged to set up voluntary schemes to work together to carry out assessments in advance of the person being physically present. I do appreciate the need for service users to ensure that when they move into a new local authority area, they're able to access the services that they need ensure they're provided. However, I do not believe that this amendment achieves this, therefore I cannot support Amendment 227. Turning to Amendments 208 and 229 from Mr Chisholm, it is right that issues of quality and continuing improvement are raised. As the policy memorandum states, this is one of the areas that this bill aims to address. However, I have a number of points to make. Firstly, Scottish ministers already have a power at section 41 of the bill regarding statutory guidance. An amendment proposed to section 41 to be considered on day 2 will require that this applies to integration authorities. Secondly, integration authorities will not directly deliver services. Health boards and local authorities will continue to deliver health and social care, albeit integrated health and social care, and will continue to be subject to existing guidance and quality standards that apply across health and social care as set out in the Scottish Government's 2020 vision for health and social care. My Amendment 102 provides for continuous improvement of services, and therefore I ask Mr Chisholm to withdraw Amendment 229. Amendment 25 and 103 in my name also reflect the concerns raised by stakeholders about the potential meaning and interpretation of the term local professionals, and that there are many people who deliver a range of services, advice and support that all contribute to the health and well-being of individuals, but may not readily see themselves or indeed be recognised by statutory bodies as professionals. I believe Amendments 25 and 103 provide the right balance in terms of reflecting these concerns and the ethos of integration as a whole. Lastly, for this grouping, I turn to Amendment 231 in Rhoda Grant's name. I have and will continue to express my admiration for the dedication, professionalism and indeed enthusiasm demonstrated by those who deliver health and social care services across Scotland, many of whom are carers to family members or friends. However, placing the Integration Authority under a requirement in taking account of the integration delivery principles to reward people who deliver services is not appropriate. I'm not sure what rewards Ms Grant envisages, but I think it's for all of us involved in the policy planning and delivery, as well as users of health and social care services, to ensure that people are supported and feel appreciated for the quality services they provide. I therefore ask Rhoda Grant to withdraw Amendment 231, and I move Amendment 19 and support Amendment 143 in Aileen MacLeod's name. I do not support Amendments 19A, 205, 206, 207, 208, 209, 97A, 223, 224, 225, 226, 227, 228, 229, 230 and 231.
Paul Malcolm Chisholm to speak to Amendment 19A and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Quite a lot of issues to deal with there, and I'll also mainly speak to the amendments that I've put forward. I noticed at the beginning of his speech, the Cabinet Secretary referred to the integration principles, which would have been my preference to have those integration principles right up at the front of the bill in Clause 1, but he then, of course, split it between planning and delivery principles, and I don't think it's worth falling out over that, although I, like many of the stakeholders, would have preferred some general overarching principles that applied to both planning and delivery and have them placed at the beginning of the bill. Now, the first issue that he raised with reference to my amendment was to do with independent living, and he said that there was no recognised definition. Well, I suppose I could say, well, what's new? I seem to remember making a speech last week about sustainable economic growth, where many people giving evidence said there was no recognised definition, but there it is in a piece of Scottish Government legislation last week. So I don't think, in fact, that stands up, particularly since the Cabinet Secretary has accepted a definition of independent living in the document Vision for Independent Living. And that definition says disabled people of all ages having the same freedom, choice, dignity and control as other citizens at home, at work and in the community. It does not mean living by yourself or fending for yourself. It means rights to practical assistance and support to participate in society and live an ordinary life. So I think there is an accepted definition. The Cabinet Secretary says it doesn't apply to everyone. Well, that definition, it says disabled people having the same freedom, choice, dignity and control as other citizens. So implicit in that is, of course, we all have it. Most of us have it without having to argue for it. Disabled people have had to argue for it, so they are on the same footing as we are. So I don't accept the Cabinet Secretary's arguments about independent living. Neither do I accept his argument about rights. I think the issue here is that we want to have a rights-based approach to integrated health and social care planning and delivery. The Cabinet Secretary says it's not necessary to use the word rights because we already are following the Human Rights Act. Well, I think it is important here because there is a particular rights-based approach to health and social care. And of course, this was accepted by the Cabinet Secretary in the Social Care Self-Directed Support Act of last year, where Section 2 of that Act refers to the right to dignity of the person is to be respected, and the person's right to participate in the life of the community in which the person lives is to be respected. So clearly, he didn't follow his own principles in regard to that legislation. So I think it would be preferable, actually, with reference to his own Amendment 24, to lift that language from the Social Care Self-Directed Support Act. I haven't actually put forward an amendment to that effect, but may do so at stage 3. What I've done here is merely put rights in a general sense in 2 places in the bill, and I think it is important to do that in order to emphasise the importance of the rights-based approach to integration. Now, I had 2 other amendments. One was about quality, and I do think the wording that I've put forward about recognised guidance and adherence to established quality standards and promoting continuous improvement in the standard and quality of care is more comprehensive than the shorter wording of improving the quality of the service. So, again, I may not press that today, but may return to it at stage 3. I think the reason why I probably won't press it is that Aileen MacLeod's 143, which includes the words improves the quality of the service, also encompasses protecting and improving the safety of service users. I think it's very important to have words about safety, so I'll probably be minded to support 143, withdraw 208, and perhaps try again at stage 3 as an amendment to 143. Finally, there is the issue of, which Nanette Milne has seconded and may hopefully speak about without trying to pressurise her, about enabling service users to exercise choice and control and to participate, that's the key word, in decisions regarding their need for services and the provision of those services. I think everyone, service user in health and social care, should have the right to participate, and I'm not really sure why the Cabinet Secretary has a problem with that. So I will press most of those amendments, but will not move 208.
Thank you. Can we now call Nanette Milne to speak on Amendment 206 and other amendments in the group?
I accept that, in fact, I think it's very welcome that the bill is very, what's the word, person-centred, is the word I'm looking for. But a number of stakeholders feel really very strongly that my Amendment 206 emphasises the sort of that the bill should go beyond just needs to sort of aspirations and abilities of people. And I appreciate what the Cabinet Secretary has said about guidance coming forward to health boards and on the definition of needs, but I think I would like to see it a bit more explicit at this stage. And I think that, I say my amendment, would, by explicitly referring to aspirations and abilities as well as needs, reflects the human rights approach to the legislation, and I would be pressing Amendment 206. The other one I'll speak about is Amendment 209, which I've supported from Malcolm Chisholm, because I think this would enable service users to participate in decisions regarding their need for services and give them the choice and control in decision-making, which I think we all feel is very important. And that's a principle which I'm very happy to support, so I will be supporting Amendment 209 in Malcolm Chisholm's name.
Thank you. We now move to Aileen MacLeod to speak on Amendment 143 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener, and can also thank the Cabinet Secretary for his support for my Amendment 143. Now, during the Committee's consideration of the bill at Stage 1, we received evidence from various stakeholders about their concerns around the need for quality and safety of care principles to be embedded within the core principles of both the planning and delivery of integrated services set out in the bill. And in the Committee Stage 1 report, we were sympathetic to these concerns, and we had asked the Government to reconsider its approach to quality and safety in the bill. Now, in the amendments that have been lodged by the Cabinet Secretary, I note that many of these concerns have been addressed, particularly the new wording that's proposed by the Cabinet Secretary in his Amendment 102, Section 25, on the integration delivery principles, page 11, line 9, which includes the wording protects and improves the safety of service users and improves the quality of the service. Now, my Amendment 143 seeks to take the same wording that is used in Section 25 around the safety of service users and the quality of services, and replicates this to apply to Section 4 on the integration planning principles, so that there is consistency in both sets of principles. And I believe that quality and safety of care is fundamental, and I'm keen for this to be emphasised within the planning principles, so that the requirements for the quality and safety of care must be taken into account by the health boards and local authorities when they are preparing their integration schemes. And I would ask colleagues to support my amendment, which I move.
Now call Rhoda Grant to speak on Amendment 223 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Can I speak to Amendment 223, 227, 228 and 231 in my name? Amendment 223 ensures that the provisions in Section 25(1)(b) apply to those services that are commissioned or contracted to provide services as they do to statutory providers. And I recognise what the Cabinet Secretary has said about having sympathy for this amendment, but maybe there are some unintended consequences. So I would look to take this amendment away and possibly bring it back at Stage 3 when I've examined what the Cabinet Secretary said about those unintended consequences. Amendment 227 provides a new duty of integrated authorities to enable service users to move between different board areas. Currently, service users moving to another authority need to be assessed when they move before their support package can be put in place. And this is a major barrier to movement, especially for career and family reasons. If we believe in providing people with basic human rights, we need to ensure that they have confidence that there will be no gap in service provision and that they will not be detrimentally affected by the decision that they need to move house. This amendment puts a duty on the integrated authorities to take this into account. I have heard what the Cabinet Secretary has said on this point, and he has also pointed out that people need to be physically present in the area before transitional arrangements can be put in place. I intend to press this amendment because I think it's important to put this in the face of the bill. I think it puts then an onus on to the integrated authorities to take this into account and make sure that people have confidence that services will be available to allow them to move, because this is a huge barrier to people moving. Amendment 228 is in regard to the 15 or indeed 7-minute care visit. This places a duty on service providers to spend a length of time that is adequate for the delivery of service that they have been commissioned to provide. It provides for service users' well-being and dignity and will hopefully ensure that service users receive adequate care and put an end, as I say, to the 15 or less minute care visit. Amendment 231 recognises that those working providing care services are often low paid, lacking training and support in order to provide those services. I think we all must recognise the dedication and professionalism of staff that provide care. It often goes unrecognised. Staff are often paid the minimum wage and receive little or no training to fulfil their duties, and this is especially the case in services that are contracted out. As we know, local government and NHS boards are signed up to paying a living wage. This is not true in other sectors. This amendment would hopefully call a halt to these practices and ensure that frontline care providers are properly trained and remunerated in order that they can provide safe and quality care. However, this amendment is dependent on Amendment 223 to put the onus on those people who are commissioned to provide services. So I intend at the moment to withdraw this amendment and bring it back at stage 3 once I can find an appropriate place to put that in that wouldn't have any unintended consequences. We should all aspire that people should be paid the living wage and make sure that all those who are paid due to the public purse are. Turning to the other amendments in the group, I would support those that seek to improve the principles of the bill and have greater emphasis on the needs and aspirations of service users. I think it's important that we put rights on the face of the bill, and as Malcolm Chisholm said, other legislation has already done this, and I would very much hope that the Cabinet Secretary would maybe see his way through to supporting that amendment.
Thank you. Any other members? Bob Doris.
Thank you, Convener. Can I make a couple of very brief contributions? Firstly, I wasn't going to speak about Amendment 228, but I would like to just make a brief reference to it. The first part of the amendment talks about improving the quality of service for service users, and I think Aileen McLeod's amendment takes that into account. And the second part, in relation to the amount of time afforded to service users, I put on the record concerns we all have about the practices on occasions of certain local authorities. I'm just not sure whether on the face of this bill is the place to put an amendment in relation to that, but I merely wanted to put on record that I don't think it's a way of dismissing some of the concerns that are out there. I just don't think this bill is the appropriate place to do it. My more substantive contribution would be in relation to Amendment 209 from Malcolm Chisholm, supported by Annette Millen, in relation to extending choice. And summing up, I'd be interested to know whether or not, in terms of extending choice of service users, the self-directed support rights that individuals have in relation to social care services already gives much of those powers over choice and control, if applied properly, could be used by service users rather than putting something on the face of this bill, and whether or not how integration works, as already said, with community planning and the new community empowerment bill as a way to extend the influence and choice and control of service users. Convener.
Thank you. I call now on the Cabinet Secretary to wind up, please.
Convener, I'll try and deal with the main points that have been raised in terms of the contribution from other members, because I think we're all trying to end up in the same place. It's largely, to an extent, how we get to the same place and suggested different routes. Can I first of all say that quite a number of these amendments are, and picking up Bob Doris's latter point there, quite a number of these amendments I'm opposing, not because I disagree with the intention of the amendment, but because I think it's more appropriate for these issues to be addressed in full in secondary legislation and in guidance. And the danger is, if we tie ourselves down in language in the face of the bill, we may at a later stage find ourselves restricted in terms of flexibility, particularly where there's changing circumstances, because obviously with secondary legislation and with guidance, it can be changed and updated on a much more regular basis to reflect changing circumstances than can primary legislation. And again, I'm happy to discuss these matters, not just with members of the committee, but also have further discussions with stakeholders about what should be the bill and what is better done in secondary legislation or in guidance. Secondly, can I just say in response to what Malcolm Chisholm, the point Malcolm made about the self-directed support bill, we didn't actually incorporate the human rights legislation into that. What we did do was define independent living and the criteria under the bill for independent living. And again, I am keen that we absolutely do everything we possibly can to encourage people with independent living, but it's not always appropriate in every circumstance. For example, if you have an extremely frail older person who is not capable of independent living, then clearly that is something that we have to address in other ways. And again, the amendments at the moment don't reflect enough flexibility in terms of the different circumstances with the multitude of service users that we're dealing with in health and social care. A very good example of that arose yesterday in BBC Scotland's example, although the reporting was somewhat inaccurate in places, but referring to people who are who've got long-term conditions, and some of whom may be in a close to a vegetative state. Clearly, independent living for them is not the appropriate package of care that would be appropriate. So we need to be able to deal with every eventuality and not constrain ourselves and have unintended consequences in terms of the wording of the bill. And that's where I'm very anxious to make sure that we do not do that, particularly in relation to independent living, which is a core part of the philosophy and the delivery of services right across everything we're doing in health and social care. Can I finally come to the point in relation to the human rights issue? I stand by what I said in terms of the fact that we are governed, unlike Westminster, by the Convention in absolutely everything we do. But I do recognise that there is a strong body of opinion that still feels strongly about the need in relation to their rights and to reflect that more in the bill. I am happy, Convener, and will undertake to have further discussions with the key stakeholders who have made this point to see if there is some way at stage 3 I can do a bit more to accommodate their position. There is no point in me repeating and putting into this bill what's already in law, but I'm happy to look at any area where they feel there is still a shortfall that they feel we need to address, and I'm happy to look again at that before we finalise stage 3 of the bill, Convener.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary for those closing remarks. Can I now call Amendment 19A in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 19. Malcolm Chisholm, to move or not move? Move. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 19A be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We have no agreement, so there will be a division. Can I have a show of hands, please, for those in favour of the Amendment 19A? For those against? For the amendment 4, against the amendment 5, the amendment is therefore not agreed. The question now is that Amendment 19 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I call Amendment 20 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19? Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 20 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. I now call Amendment 21 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 21 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. I now call Amendment 205 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 19. Malcolm Chisholm, to move or not move? Move. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 205 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? There is a division. We are not agreed. Those in favour of Amendment 205, please show. Those against? No abstentions. For the Amendment 4, against Amendment 5, the amendment is therefore not agreed. I now call Amendment 206 in the name of Nanette Millen, already debated with Amendment 19. Nanette Millen, to move or not move? Move. The question then is that Amendment 206 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? There is no agreement. There is a division. Those in favour of the Amendment 206? Those against? The result of those for the Amendment 4 against Amendment 5, the amendment is therefore not agreed. Can I now call on Amendment 22 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19? Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 22 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I call Amendment 207 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 19. Malcolm Chisholm, to move or not move? Move. Move. The question is then that Amendment 207 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? We are not. We have a division. All those in favour of Amendment 207, please show. Those against? The result then is for the Amendment 4, against Amendment 5, no abstention. The amendment is therefore not agreed. Can I call Amendment 23 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19? Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 23 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? I now call Amendment 24 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question then is that Amendment 24 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. I now call Amendment 143 in the name of Aileen MacLeod, already debated with Amendment 19. Aileen MacLeod, to move or not move?
Move.
Thank you. The question is then Amendment 143 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I now call Amendment 208 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 19. Malcolm Chisholm, to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. I now call then Amendment 209 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 19. Malcolm Chisholm, to move or not move? Move. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 209 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The committee are not agreed. There is a division. Those in favour of Amendment 209, please show. Those against? No abstentions. For the Amendment 4, against the Amendment 5, the amendment is therefore not agreed. The question now is, we call Amendment 25 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 25 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Now call Amendment 26 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 19. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 26 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. The question is then that Section 4 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. I now propose to have a short comfort break at this point for 5 minutes. I knew I would make Richard Lyle happy. It's my purpose in life to put a smile on that man's face. Well, we'll take a break, suspend for 5 minutes. Thank you very much. Now reconvene, and I call Amendment 210 in the name of Bob Doris, grouped with Amendments 213, 215, 220, 232, 235 and 238. Bob Doris to move Amendment 210 and speak to all the amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener. Section 1 of the Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill provides that a local authority and health board must prepare an integration plan with regard to the delegation of functions and resources for the area of the local authority. This plan must be set out which integration model will apply, the functions to be delegated and the resources which will be available to support the effective delivery of those functions. The integration plan will also have a key part to play in delivering the new framework being introduced by the legislation. Significantly, a local authority and a health board must, before submitting the integration plan to Scottish Ministers for approval, jointly consult various persons or groups of persons under Section 6(2) of the Bill. Convener, allied health professionals deliver a wide range of significant health and social care outcomes. They are experts in rehabilitation, re-ablement, preventative care, health promotion and self-management. Indeed, allied health professionals are often the link which holds complex health and social care pathways together, especially for older people and those with long-term conditions. Many individuals value highly the person-centred therapeutic approach applied by allied health professionals. Significantly also, the desired outcomes of the bill, particularly in relation to positive patient experience, align with the approach and practice of the allied health professionals. Amendment 213, Convener, would ensure that allied health professionals are consulted in the preparation of such integration plans. Amendment 210 refers to Section 3 of the bill, provides that where a local authority and a health board are preparing an integration plan, they must have regard to the integration planning principles and to the national health and wellbeing outcomes. Under Section 5, the Scottish Ministers may, by regulation, prescribe national outcomes in relation to health and wellbeing. Before making such regulations, however, Scottish Ministers are required to, under Section 5(3) of the legislation, to consult representatives of various bodies and groups and to involve them in the development of these outcomes. Amendment 213, Convener, would ensure that allied health professionals are consulted at that point. Amendments 215 and 220 refer to integration joint boards and integration joint monitoring committees, respectively. If passed, this would give a statutory right to a place on such boards and committees. If it is not desirable to put allied health professionals on there in a statutory footing, I would ask the Cabinet Secretary what reassurances he could give to ensure that allied health professionals were suitably consulted and had their expert views known. Amendments 235 and 232, I will now turn to those two, Convener. Integration authorities, for the purposes of preparing a strategic plan, must establish and consult groups, and the terms used is such other persons as it considers appropriate. If passed, 235 and 232 would ensure that allied health professionals would be specified as such appropriate groups or persons to be consulted. The final amendment, 238, inserts it gives a definition to a term used throughout these amendments of relevant professional. And for the purposes of these amendments, a relevant professional would have the same meaning as in the Health Professions Order 2001. Convener, in the preparation of these amendments, one of the difficulties was that there seemed to be no agreed legal definition of allied health professionals, and that is the reason why that relevant professional is placed within the bill. And using that expression, some other stakeholder groups did suggest to me, correctly in my view, that to define a relevant professional as an allied health professional was actually a rather narrow definition, and in itself, Convener, I think that shows the difficulties when you try to specify different groups to appear on the face of the bill to have statutory rights as consultees or specifically on boards. I am convinced that allied health professionals have a vital role to play in health and social care integration, and in other areas including 7-day healthcare provisions, which this Parliament has been looking at in the recent past and will continue to look at as part of the 2020 vision. Therefore, these amendments were intended to be probing amendments to get some assurances from the Cabinet Secretary that a key stakeholder group are allied health professionals, and depending on the Cabinet Secretary's response to the points that I have made, I would be content to withdraw them at the appropriate stage.
Thank you. Any other members? I see Malcolm Chisholm.
Thank you, Convener. Just briefly, I certainly support the thrust of what Bob Doris is saying in the way in which so often in the past the vital contribution and role of allied health professionals has been overlooked. So I don't know whether this particular amendment is the right way to do it. I'm open-minded about that. I have an amendment that's coming up later that certainly, in a different context, recognises the importance of allied health professionals. So in general terms, I would be anxious that that should be recognised both in the bill and in accompanying guidance. So I certainly support the spirit of what Bob Doris is saying, but we may need to revisit the actual wording subject to what the Cabinet Secretary says.
I have sympathy with those amendments as well. I would very much hope that all health professionals involved in delivery of frontline services would be involved in all the processes in the bill. I think when we went up and visited Highland, one of the things that struck us most was that nursing staff, allied health professionals, everybody involved in somebody's care were speaking together. There was no barriers to that and actually delivering good quality care. So I would very much hope that not only would allied health professionals be involved, and I think there is concern that they have maybe not been so fully involved in the past as they should be, but all health professionals.
Nate Millen.
I would agree with that. And I mean, Rhoda Grant speaks about the visit to Highland, and we saw the same in West Lothian, where I think the integration was working because all professionals were involved, sort of focusing on the needs of the patients that were being looked after. And I think it's crucial to involve them all, and to see that in the bill, I think, would be very important.
Thank you. No other members. Now ask Bob Doris to formally move. Cabinet Secretary. Sorry, Cabinet Secretary. My rush to get thinking about lunch. Cabinet Secretary to respond.
Thank you very much indeed, Convener. Can I first of all refer to Amendment 210 and the other ones associated with it? Can I say that Section 48 of the bill allows Scottish ministers to prescribe via regulations a list of health professionals? It is not clear whether the amendment is intended to fully define health professionals or to expand the types of professional who must be consulted to cover a broader range of health professionals. Given that Scottish ministers have a power to prescribe via regulations, what is meant by health professionals is not at all clear what added value this amendment would bring. The effect would be to remove some of the flexibility for Scottish ministers to define health professionals. The intended effect may be to provide clarity on the face of the bill about which professionals working in health services must be consulted under sections 5, 6 and 7 and included under 12, 16 and 26. However, the definition as currently provided does not appear to achieve this outcome. It covers various professions, but not, for example, doctors and nurses. The effect is therefore confusing and appears to add unnecessary complexity to the provision already made for inclusion of health professionals in the consultation process. Amendment 238 provides a definition of relevant professionals, and again, I think this does not provide the comprehensive definition. So can I say, Presiding Officer, I fully understand the intention is to ensure that all health professionals, including allied health professionals, are properly consulted, particularly in terms of the regulations and the guidance and the secondary legislation. And I believe that the existing provisions already do that. But I give an absolute undertaking also to make sure that that happens because we are very keen, and as Nanette Millen rightly said, as well as Bob Doris, that the success of projects already up and running, integration already up and running, such as West Lothian, proves the benefits and the absolute necessity to involve all the professionals in every stage of both the design and the delivery of health and social care services. But unfortunately, I think these amendments don't do the job that's better done elsewhere in the bill and in regulations.
I now call on Bob Doris to move the amendment, wind up, press or withdraw.
In formally moving the amendment, can I thank the Cabinet Secretary for his reassurances. I think it's been put on the public record the central role that allied health professionals and others will have in relation to making a success of health, not just health and social care integration, but other challenges that will face social care and public health in the years ahead. So, given the reassurances that I've had, I will not push the amendment, Convener, so to withdraw.
Okay, the amendment is withdrawn. Can I now call on Amendment 211 in the name of Rhoda Grant and a group on its own? Rhoda Grant to move and speak to the amendment.
Can I move Amendment 211? This amendment provides for organisations representing service users and carers, peer support groups, or indeed organisations that have a role in providing services, advice or advocacy to enhance health and well-being of service users, which are not included in the groups specified currently in Section 5(4) of the Bill. It provides that they can also be consulted on the national health and wellbeing outcomes. This doesn't prescribe any group, but allows organisations with a remit or have a valuable contribution to make to be involved and consulted in the national outcomes.
Thank you. Any other members? Lynette Millen.
Happy to support Rhoda Grant's amendment. I think this will catch all the people who do have a worthy contribution to make and who should be consulted.
Thank you. No other members? Cabinet Secretary.
Convener, Section 5 deals with the power to prescribe national outcomes for health and wellbeing. Subsections 3 and 4 deal with requirements in Scottish ministers to consult various groups before making regulations to prescribe the national outcomes. Amendment 211 adds an additional group to the list of groups in respect of which Scottish ministers must consult such representatives as they see fit. The list currently covers health professionals, users of healthcare, carers of users of healthcare, commercial providers of healthcare, non-commercial providers of healthcare, social care professionals, users of social care, carers of users of social care, commercial providers of social care, and non-commercial providers of social care. Rhoda Grant's amendment adds other organisations contributing to the health and wellbeing of service users to the list. Consultation on the outcomes needs to be broad in scope to ensure the needs and priorities of service users are fully reflected. The bill as introduced provides for such breadth, and Rhoda Grant's amendment therefore adds no extra value to the already very broad requirement. I therefore call upon Rhoda Grant to withdraw Amendment 211.
Rhoda Grant to wind up, press or withdraw.
I believe that organisations such as peer support groups, advice or advocacy groups aren't included in this, and I would wish to press the amendment to ensure that any group that has a contribution to make should be included.
The question is then that Amendment 211 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The committee doesn't agree, and there will be a division. Those in favour of Amendment 211, please show. Those against? The result of the division is for the Amendment 4, against the Amendment 5. The amendment is therefore not agreed. The question is then that Section 5 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. Call Amendment 27 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated, with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 27 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Call Amendment 28 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated, with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally. Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 28 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. call Amendment 212 in the name of Rhoda Grant and a group on its own, Rhoda Grant, to move and speak to the amendment.
Thank you, Convener. I wish to move Amendment 212. This amendment is part of a suite of amendments that ensure co-production with service users and their carers. Amendment 212 ensures the involvement of service users and carers in the preparation of integration plans. It ensures that they, along with their representative groups, will be involved in the process. It ensures co-production in bringing forward the integration plans, which I think is very important to involving them in services that are provided for them.
Any other members? Oh. No. Cabinet Secretary.
Convener, Amendment 212 adds the requirement for health boards and local authorities to involve service users, unpaid carers, third sector organisations and others in the process of developing and agreeing their integration plan. The committee will wish to note the list of stakeholders within the policy statement provided in relation to Section 6 and that Scottish ministers intend to require are consulted on integration schemes. This list of stakeholders includes all those noted already within the Amendment 212, as well as a number of other groups of people that I believe should also be consulted, such as health and social care professionals. I would draw the committee's attention to Section 6(3), which requires that the local authority and health board must take account of any views expressed by those that they must consult, as noted in the policy statement. This requirement to consult and take account of views goes beyond a duty to involve, as this amendment would provide. Therefore, the existing provisions in Section 6 and the regulations I intend to make under that section already go further than the effect of this amendment. I would therefore ask Rhoda Grant to withdraw Amendment 212.
Thank you. Rhoda Grant to wind up and pressure withdraw.
My belief is this amendment goes further than consulting, that it seeks to involve people. This is genuine co-production where people are involved in planning services that they will be using. So I would seek to press Amendment 212.
Press an amendment. So the question is that Amendment 212 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The committee are not agreed. There will be a division. Those in favour of Amendment 212, please show. Those against? There are no abstentions. The result of division for the Amendment 4 against the Amendment 5. No abstentions. The amendment is therefore not agreed to. Can I now call Amendment 213 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 210. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not moved, Convener.
Thank you. Therefore, call Amendment 29. Call Amendment 29 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Formally moved.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 29 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. The question is that Section 6 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendments 30 to 34, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. I invite the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 30 to 34 in block. Ask whether any member objects to...
A move on block.
You're moving in block.
Move on block, Convener.
I'm moving on too fast. Ask whether any member objects to a single question being put on Amendments 30 to 34. No objections. The question is then that Amendments 30 to 34 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. And I now call Amendment 144 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendment 145. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 144 and speak to all the amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. The bill, as introduced, does not clearly establish the process for approval, modification and resubmission of integration schemes. These amendments ensure that this process is made explicit and is conducted within a set time frame. The amendments will require that where Scottish ministers refuse to approve an integration scheme, the Health Board and the local authority will be given one opportunity to provide a modified integration scheme. The amendments require Scottish ministers to provide detailed information as to why the scheme was not approved and provide advice as to how it can be amended to meet with approval. Scottish ministers will set a timescale that the resultant modified scheme must be submitted for consideration. If Scottish ministers find cause to reject a modified integration scheme, for example, if the detailed information and advice provided by Scottish ministers has not been taken account of, then the amendments make clear that Scottish ministers will use their default powers outlined in section 39 to ensure that integration occurs. These amendments will ensure that fit-for-purpose integration schemes are established across Scotland in good time to progress integration, and I move Amendment 144.
Thank you. Any other members wish? No? Cabinet Secretary doesn't need to add any remarks. Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 144 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Call Amendment 35 in the name of Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question therefore is that Amendment 35 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Now call Amendment 145 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 144. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move,
Thank
Convener.
you. The question is then that Amendment 145 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is then that Section 7 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. I now call Amendment 36 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 36 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. The question is that Section 8 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendment 37 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
The question therefore is that Amendment 37 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendment 38 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, group with Amendments 61, 62 and 63. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 38 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Section 9 as introduced covers delegation of functions where the Integration Joint Board model is used. Subsection 3 establishes that functions for integration must be delegated before the prescribed date. Amendment 38 enables delegation of functions to take place at any date after the integration scheme has been approved by Scottish ministers, providing that the formal requirements of the bill in relation to the strategic plan are complied with. Scottish ministers may also prescribe a day by which all functions must be delegated and strategic plans commenced. This enables integration authorities to put integrated arrangements in place as soon as they're ready, while making provision for a date by which integrated arrangements must be in place. Amendment 38 responds to feedback from stakeholders indicating that different areas are at different stages of development in relation to integration, and those who are further ahead do not want to be artificially held back by a single go-live date that applies to all areas. Amendments 61 and 62 provide clarification about the date on which a lead agency arrangement will go live. It also provides for certainty in start dates for lead agency arrangements, enabling Scottish ministers to prescribe a day by which functions must be delegated, with the result that all integrated health and social care arrangements in Scotland will be in place by that date at the latest. Locally, partners will also have flexibility to delegate functions earlier than this. Amendment 63 is consequential to Amendment 62, and I move Amendment 38.
Yeah. Any other members? No? No need to add anything, Cabinet Secretary? Thank you. The question therefore is that Amendment 38 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Question is then that Section 9 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Can I now call Amendment 39 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 11. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally move, Convener.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 39 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? I now call Amendment 40 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 11. Cabinet Secretary, you move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 40 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question is then that Section 10 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Call Amendment 41 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendments 42, 43, 45, 214, 46 to 48, 51 and 217. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 41 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendments 41 and 42 in my name seek to provide further clarity on the ability of Scottish Ministers to make an order under Section 11 that would allow integration joint boards to recruit staff other than the Chief Officer. Amendment 41 provides for flexibility in the use of the powers, so an order made under Section 11 can apply to a single or some integration joint boards. Amendment 42 places a requirement on Scottish Ministers to consult with health boards, local authorities and integration joint boards where established before exercising the power to make an order under Section 11 to enable integration joint boards to directly employ staff. Enabling integration joint boards to employ staff provides for a significant change in the delivery of health and social care. Therefore, I fully recognise the wide-ranging nature of these powers. Amendments 41 and 42 will establish a flexible and collaborative approach to the further empowerment of integration joint boards, which I believe is more appropriate. Amendments 43, 45, 46, 47, 48 and 52 all relate to Section 12, which sets out the further provisions that relate to integration joint boards. Amendment 43 aims to clarify that their functions means both functions conferred directly on the Integration Joint Board by virtue of the bill, such as a duty to prepare a strategic plan, and delegated functions by virtue of an integration scheme, and that in either case these powers can only be conferred on the Integration Joint Board by an order made by Scottish Ministers. Amendment 45 enables Scottish Ministers to make an order allowing integration joint boards to establish committees or to delegate functions conferred upon them by an integration scheme. This will be necessary for effective delivery of functions should direct delivery of delegated functions by the Integration Joint Board be permitted in future. It is important that the responsibility for the effective carrying out of both the delegated functions and the functions conferred on the Integration Joint Board by virtue of the bill, such as preparing the strategic plan, continues to rest with the Integration Joint Board. Therefore, it's only the delegated functions that may be sub-delegated to committees of the Integration Joint Board, the Chief Officer of the Integration Joint Board, or employees of the Integration Joint Board. Amendment 214 from Rhoda Grant would add a requirement that when Scottish Ministers prescribe the membership of the Integration Joint Board, they must include service users, unpaid carers and non-commercial organisations. The Committee will wish to note the policy statement provided for Section 12, which provides detailed information on the requirements that the Scottish Ministers intend to set out in regulations in relation to the membership and proceedings of the Integration Joint Board. The list of members of the Integration Joint Board includes all those noted within Amendment 214 and a number of other groups of people that I believe should be involved, such as health and social care professionals. I believe that it's disproportionate to set out on the face of the bill the groups noted in Amendment 214, thus treating the representation of these groups in a different way than the representation, for example, of that of local authorities and health boards. I believe that the proper place to list the membership of the Integration Joint Board is in regulation, and I intend to include all those noted within Amendment 214. I therefore cannot support Amendment 214. Amendment 46 will ensure that Scottish Ministers' powers in Section 12 are subject to appropriate restrictions. It will allow Scottish Ministers to set out a standard set of arrangements for integration joint boards, covering membership and general proceedings to be introduced, and will prevent these arrangements being varied when it is not appropriate. Amendment 47 specifies that an order made under Section 12 does not require to make general provision for all integration joint boards except for general orders noted in Amendment 46, but could also be for either one or some integrated joint boards. This is a drafting amendment which gives clarity to the use of the power in Section 12. With regard to Amendment 48, stakeholders have raised concerns that the powers in Section 12 are far-reaching and, should they be exercised, could significantly change the delivery of health and social care. I recognise these concerns, especially of local government, and therefore bring forward Amendment 48, which will require Scottish ministers to consult with the Health Board, the local authority and integration joint board where established. This will ensure empowerment of integration joint boards, where appropriate, is taken forward in a collaborative way. Amendment 51 requires integration joint boards to A, have an officer responsible for the financial affairs of the integration joint board, B, keep accounts, and C, have their accounts audited and to provide for the audit to be carried out by the Accounts Commission for Scotland. This will ensure that the bill provides for the proper stewardship, accounting and audit of the money received and paid by integration joint boards, and for a duty upon integration joint boards to achieve value for money. Amendment 217 from Rhoda Grant, which would create a new complaints and appeals system for integration joint boards, is, I believe, unnecessary. Health boards and local authorities already have complaint systems. We fully recognise that the current system for social work complaints is no longer up to date or fit for purpose, and we've been working to produce a new system which will be more accessible, allow complaints to be completed far faster, and give greater transparency for the user. We expect that complaints made in relation to services provided by local authorities or health boards will be handled in accordance with new regulations, which we expect to bring forward shortly, which will produce a joined-up, seamless complaint service and a coordinated response for the complainant. The Public Bodies Joint Working Scotland Bill is not the appropriate legislative vehicle to make changes to the complaint system, especially when we have not consulted on them as part of this bill. I move Amendment 41, and I invite Rhoda Grant not to move Amendments 214 and 217.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Call on Rhoda Grant to speak to Amendment 214 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. I wish to speak to Amendments 214 and 217. The purpose of 214 is to ensure that all users and carers and their representatives will have a representative member on integration boards. Well, this by necessity would have to be a board member representing a very wide group. It would be important that their involvement goes to the very heart of the integration board, and I welcome what the Cabinet Secretary has said about setting that out in regulations. And he also mentioned that he didn't want to treat them differently from other groups that were involved on the board. However, I would suggest that they are different because they are who the services are devised for, and I would hope that co-production would be looked at as part of this bill and involve them in the decisions made for them. While I understand that this amendment would not have a meaning in practice, given that he's bringing forward regulations to put it into force, I would withdraw, but maybe hope that the Cabinet Secretary would look at a way of putting users and carers at the very heart of the bill, so that it's very clear that this is for them and co-production should be involved in bringing forward services that are used by them and support them. Amendment 217 seeks to ensure an integrated complaints procedure which would be devised by the government and would provide a degree of uniformity throughout integrated boards. I note what the Cabinet Secretary has said about bringing forward a joint-up complaints procedure. I think it's really important that service users don't have to try and find out which authority, health board, integrated authority, or indeed the health board that someone works for before they can instigate a complaint. So I think it's really important that we have a joint-up scheme. I'll wait and see what the Cabinet Secretary seeks to bring forward, and will at the moment withdraw that amendment.
Thank you. Any other members wish to participate at this point? No. Cabinet Secretary, wind up.
Just to thank Rhoda Grant for withdrawing the amendments and say that, I will stick to the commitments I've undergiven and take on board the points that she's made.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 41 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendment 42 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated. With Amendment 41, Cabinet Secretary, move forward.
Formally move, Convener.
The question is then that Amendment 42 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Question is then that Section 11 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Can I now call Amendments 43, 44 and 45, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. Invite the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 43 to 45 in block and seek the Committee's agreement to that there is no objection to a single question be put to Amendments 43 to 45.
Move on block, Convener.
Right, thanks. Okay. No objection from the committee. The move on block. Thank you. The question, therefore, is that Amendments 43 and 45 are agreed to. Are we all agreed?
Yes, 42, 45.
43 to 45. Yeah. Call Amendment 241 in the name of Rhoda Grant, already debated. That is the one that you're not moving. Okay. Call Amendment 215 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated, with Amendment 210. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not move, Convener.
Thank you. Call amendments, therefore, 46, 47, 48, 49, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. Invite the Cabinet Secretary to move amendments 46 to 49 in block.
On block, move.
Thank you. Seek the committee's. There's no objection to them being put. Thank you. The question, therefore, is that amendments 46 to 49 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. We now call Amendment 50 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendments 216, 218, 66, 80 and 81. Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 50 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. The order-making power in Section 12 provides for Scottish Ministers by scheme to enable staff, property rights, etc. of a local authority or health board to be transferred to an integration joint board. Integration joint boards will not initially be established with employees of their own, but will instead discharge their duties via directions to the health board and local authorities. Section 12, subsection 3, allows for a possible future decision by Scottish ministers that integration joint boards should be able to employ staff directly. I fully realise that this has wide-ranging implications for the delivery of health and social care. I therefore bring forward Amendment 50, which requires Scottish ministers to consult with the relevant integration joint board, relevant health board and local authority before making such a scheme as an appropriate and proportionate mechanism to ensure a collaborative approach for the transfer of staff, property, rights and liabilities to integration joint boards. Similarly, Amendment 66 places a requirement on Scottish ministers to consult the health board and local authority before making any such scheme under Section 15 about the transfer of staff between health board and local authority employment in either direction under lead agency arrangements in order to ensure that their views are taken into account. Amendment 216 and 218 in the name of Rhoda Grant have the effect of requiring Scottish ministers before making such a scheme under Section 12 or Section 15 in relation to staff to consult with health professionals, social care professionals and other groups of persons whom Scottish ministers consider to have an interest. I recognise the concerns that have been expressed during stage 1 of the bill process that staff should be given a voice in any decision to transfer their employment in future from a health board or local authority to an integration joint board. I welcome Rhoda Grant's amendments in this respect and accept Amendments 216 and 218. Furthermore, Section 36(3) of the Bill makes similar provision for Scottish ministers by scheme to make provision about the transfer of staff in consequence of a new integration scheme. For consistency, I therefore intend to bring forward an amendment at stage 3, replicating the effect of Amendment 216 and 218 in relation to section 38, in relation to S36(3) as well. Amendment 80 seeks to clarify the circumstances in which Section 19 applies. Section 19 already makes clear that it applies to transfers of employment under the circumstances set out in Section 12 and Section 15. The amendment puts beyond doubt that Section 19 also applies to transfers of employment which take place where a scheme is made as a result of a new integration scheme under Section 35. Amendment 81 clarifies the intention of Section 19(3)(b) in relation to pension obligations in circumstances where staff transfer between employer, between a local authority and health board, or to an integration joint board. Where there is such a transfer, there will be no transfer of any liability for any deficit or right to a share in any surplus in respect of the transferred employee's membership of a pension scheme for their employment prior to the transfer. The amendment ensures that such transfers correspond to the requirements of international accounting standards and avoids the risk of a potential misinterpretation resulting in a material additional expense to the original employer. I move Amendment 50 and support Amendments 216 and 218 in the name of Rhoda Grant.
Paul Rhoda Grant to speak to Amendment 216. Amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. I wish to speak to Amendment 216 and 218. These two amendments recognise the impact of staff and the changes to integration boards. In the public sector, there are already efficient and well-established procedures for consulting, negotiating and involving staff in changes to their working conditions and arrangements, and we'd hope that these good practices would continue into the partnership authorities and especially during the time of transition. However, I think it's important to put that on the face of the bill to ensure this happens, and I'm grateful to the Cabinet Secretary for his support on those amendments. With regard to Amendment 81 regarding pensions, I understand what the Cabinet Secretary is saying, but I would maybe seek assurance that that doesn't interfere with a person's right to transfer their pension if they see fit, if that gives them the best deal when they move employer. So I seek some reassurance in that.
Any other members? No. Cabinet Secretary, wind up, please.
Convener, just to reassure Rhoda Grant on the final point you made that this amendment does not affect the employee's right to transfer their pension.
Okay. The question is then that Amendment 50 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. Call Amendment 216 in the name of Rhoda Grant, already debated with Amendment 50. Rhoda Grant to move or not move?
Moved.
The question is then that Amendment 216 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. The question is then that Section 12 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. Call Amendment 51 in the name of Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 41. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
The question is then that Amendment 51 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendment 217 in the name of Rhoda Grant, already debated with Amendment 41. Rhoda Grant to move or not move?
Not moved.
Thank you. The question, I now call Amendment 52 then in the name of Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 52 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call Amendment 53 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Question is then that Amendment 53 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Call Amendment 146 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, already debated with Amendment 3. Malcolm Chisholm to move or not move? Move. Not move. I therefore move to call Amendments 54 to 59, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. I invite the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 54 to 59 in block.
Move on block, Convener.
Thank you. Confirm that no member objects to a single question being put on amendments 54 to 59. No objection. The question is then that amendments 54 to 59 are agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. The question is then that section 13 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Call amendments 60 to 63, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. Invite the Cabinet Secretary to move amendments 60 to 63 in block.
Move on block, Convener.
Confirm that no members object to the single question being put on amendments 60 to 63. No objection. The question is then that amendments 60 to 63 are agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. The question is then that section 14 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call amendment 64 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Question is then that amendment 64 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. Call amendment 218 in the name of Rhoda Grant, already debated with amendment 50. Rhoda Grant to move or not move?
Move.
The question is then that amendment 218 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? I now call amendment 65 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that amendment 65 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Call amendment 66 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with amendment 50. Cabinet Secretary move formally.
Formally moved, Convener.
Thank you. Question is then that amendment 66 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Question is that section 15 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call amendment 219 in the name of Rhoda Grant and a group on its own. Rhoda Grant to move and speak to the amendment. Other members at... Oh, sorry. Go on, Rhoda.
Okay.
Raising the hand again.
Thank you, Convener. Can I move amendment 219? Again, this amendment deals with the principles of co-production by ensuring service users and carers or their representative groups are included in the membership of monitoring committee. Again, it ensures their involvement of every stage in the process, and I would hope very much that people would support this amendment to make sure that service users and carers are involved in monitoring the care that is provided for them.
Okay. Any other members wish to participate? No. Cabinet Secretary.
Thank you, Convener. I believe that Amendment 219 should refer to section 16(1)(b), which is the power to make regulations regarding membership, rather than section 1A, which is the power to make an order regarding establishment, and I'll proceed on that basis. Amendment 219 adds a requirement that when Scottish Ministers prescribe the membership of the Integration Joint Monitoring Committee, they must include service users, unpaid carers and non-commercial organisations. The committee will wish to note the policy statement provided for section 16, which provides detailed information on Scottish Ministers' intentions in relation to the provision that will be made for the membership and proceedings of the Integration Joint Monitoring Committee. The list of members of the Integration Joint Monitoring Committee that I intend to prescribe includes all those noted within Amendment 219 and a number of other very important groups of people, such as health and social care professionals and a staff representative. I believe that it is disproportionate to set out on the face of the bill that we should include the groups noted in Amendment 219, but not provide in this way for example, the representation of local authorities and health boards, health and social care professionals, or service users themselves. I believe that the proper place to list the membership of the Integration Joint Monitoring Committee is in secondary legislation, and I intend to include all those noted within Amendment 219 in secondary legislation, and I would ask on that basis Rhoda Grant to withdraw Amendment 219.
Calling Rhoda Grant to wind up. Press or withdraw.
Given the reassurance from the Cabinet Secretary, I will withdraw the amendment.
Thank you. Now move to call Amendment 220 in the name of Bob Doris, already debated with Amendment 210. Bob Doris, to move or not move?
Not move, Convener.
Thank you. And the question is then that section 16 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call amendments 67 to 70, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, all previously debated. Invite the Cabinet Secretary to move amendments 67 to 70 in block.
Block.
Thank you. And confirm that no member of the committee objects to a single question being put on amendments 67 to 70. No objection. Thank you. The question is then that amendments 67 to 70 are agreed. Are we all agreed? Thank you. The question therefore is that section 17 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. Now call amendments 71 to 78, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, and all previously debated. Invite the Cabinet Secretary to move amendments 71 to 78 in block. And
move on block, Convener.
Yes, thank you, Cabinet Secretary. And ask whether any member has an objection to a single question being put on amendments 71 to 78. No objection. The question then is that amendments 71 to 78 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. The question, therefore, is that section 18 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 79 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 3. Cabinet Secretary, to move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
Thank you. The question is that Amendment 79 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thanks. I now call Amendment 80 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 50. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
Thank you. Question therefore is that Amendment 80 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 81 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 50. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
The question is that Amendment 81 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. The question is then that Section 19 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 82 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 1. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
Thank you. The question is then that Amendment 82 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 83 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 11. Cabinet Secretary, move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
Question therefore is that Amendment 83 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? The question then is that Section 20 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendment 84 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, grouped with Amendments 85, 87, 88 and 89. The Cabinet Secretary to move Amendment 84 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendments 84 and 85 will allow functions that are conferred by statute directly on an officer of a health board or local authority, where those functions relate to a function delegated as part of the integration scheme, to be treated as being conferred on officers of the other bodies who prepared the same integration scheme. This will ensure that there are no barriers to fully integrating health and social care arising from the fact that certain statutes confer functions directly on officers of local authorities or health boards. It will allow flexibility in the exercise of such functions, which is consistent with the aim of integration. With regard to Amendment 87, Section 21 covers the effect of delegation of functions in terms of the rights, duties and powers of health boards, local authorities and integration authorities. These provisions are important in terms of particularly establishing liability in the event of any failure of integrated services. As the bill was introduced, liability in the event of failure rested entirely with the authority to whom functions were delegated. I now consider that this is an impractical approach to questions of liability, which as time goes on will be, by definition, be complex in nature, given the complexity of people's needs and the resulting health and social care provision that will support them. Amendment 87 follows the principle that responsibility should rest with control and makes clear that the Integration Authority or either of the delegating bodies may be liable for any claims arising from the exercise of delegated functions. The Integration Authority may be liable particularly for claims that can be attributed to failures in relation to its role, for example, failures of strategic planning. However, this does not preclude the possibility that either the Health Board or local authority should be liable for acts which shall be carried out in the exercise of a direction of the integrated authority through the strategic plan were factually within their control. A great deal of work has been undertaken with stakeholders since publication of the bill to clarify questions relating to governance and, as part of that, liability in the event of things going wrong under integration. Amendment 87 sets out a practical approach to the potential complexities of liability under integrated arrangements. It allows responsibility for the exercise of functions to be exercised on a case-by-case basis, which, given the complexities of health and social care planning and provision for an ageing population, is, I judge, an appropriate and proportionate solution. Work is ongoing with stakeholders in terms of planning for any liabilities that may arise under the exercise of integrated health and social care provision. A working group is planned comprising all members of the Society of Local Authority Lawyers and Administrators, the Central Legal Office of NHS Scotland and Scottish Government Legal Directorate to develop guidance for integration authorities which will enable them to set out provisions regarding liability in their integration schemes. With regards to Amendment 88, Section 22 provides for integration authorities to give directions to health boards and local authorities with respect to carrying out functions. This section enables integration authorities to ensure that health boards and local authorities provide the services that are set out under the strategic plan. The purpose of Amendment 88 is to close the loop that enables the Integration Joint Board to oversee the strategic planning process by giving directions to health boards and local authorities for the delivery of services. Amendment 88 changes Section 22 to reflect the different integration models. It provides that where the Integration Authority is an Integration Joint Board, i.e. where the corporate body model is used, the Integration Joint Board must provide direction to the Health Board and local authority for the provision of services. Integration Joint Boards will not initially, at least, employ their own staff and directly deliver services, and so it will be necessary, in order for services to be delivered, for directions always to be given either to the Health Board or local authority. On the other hand, where the lead agency model is used, the bill enables but does not require the lead agency, whether it's a health board or local authority, to give direction to the delegating agency for the delivery of services where necessary. The lead agency itself will also deliver some services, and so the requirement to give directions is not mandatory in this instance. This amendment supports the circumstances where more than one local authority agrees a lead agency arrangement with a health board. In that situation, the local authority that is the lead agency can choose to direct only one of the local authorities to carry out a function for the entire area covered by the integration scheme. Amendment 88 at subsection 3 provides that the person to whom the direction is given must provide such information as is necessary to enable the Integration Authority to judge whether a direction is necessary. This amendment assures that such information as is necessary for effective strategic planning is shared between the Integration Authority, the Health Board and the local authority. Amendment 88 at subsections 4 and 5 provides that a direction can be given to more than one person, so an Integration Joint Board can give a direction to both the Health Board and the local authority, and that such a direction can require each party to carry out parts or all of the direction depending on circumstances. This amendment enables the Integration Authority to give directions in such a way as support integrated service delivery by bringing together the activities of delivery teams in the Health Board and local authority. With regard to Amendment 89, Section 22 provides for integration authorities to give directions to health boards and local authorities with respect to carrying out functions. This new section enables integration authorities to ensure that health boards and local authorities provide the services that are set out under the strategic plan. Subsection 1 of Amendment 89 ensures that directions issued under Section 22 make adequate provision for the carrying out of functions, particularly in relation to the making of payments and the manner of carrying out the function. The effect of subsection 1 is that it will be clear to the person to whom a direction is issued how the Integration Authority expects the function to be provided, and the Integration Authority will be better placed to ensure delivery of integrated functions in accordance with the strategic plan. Amendment 89, subsection 2, ensures that integration authorities are able to use directions to manage any difficult relationships with the Health Board and/or local authority. The effect is that where an integration authority needs to take action to protect its interests, for example, to obtain information, enforce any court order, or pursue any claim against the Health Board or local authority, it can do this by way of a direction. Subsection 2 also provides for the situation in which any liability incurred by the integration authority necessitates a payment to be made by the Health Board or the local authority. Subsection 3 clarifies that it is the integration authority that must make payments to the Health Board and local authority in support of the directions given. Subsections 6 and 7 provide for the situation in which a Health Board and local authority agree that an integration joint board should be enabled to deliver some functions directly by itself. These provisions allow for the possible future position in which an integrated board is to employ such staff and manage such contractual arrangements as are necessary to deliver services directly. This amendment enables Scottish ministers to make an order preventing the joint board from giving direction to the Health Board and local authority, and thus enabling it to carry out the function directly itself. Such an application must be made to Scottish ministers by the Health Board and local authority in writing. Scottish ministers may, in response, make an order relating to the relevant functions, and the Integration Joint Board may decline the request entirely or may make the order in relation only to some of the functions concerned, depending on whether they are of the view that doing so would improve performance in terms of the national health and well-being outcomes. Subsection 8 provides for circumstances in which ministers do not believe that quality of outcomes would be improved by enabling an integration joint board to deliver some functions directly by itself, and allows ministers to exclude such functions from the order. I move Amendment 84.
Thank the Cabinet Secretary. Any members? No. I don't suppose the Cabinet Secretary has got anything to add. No. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 84 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Thank you. I now call Amendments 85, 86 and 87, all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated. I can invite the Cabinet Secretary to move Amendments 86 to 87 in block.
Move on block, Convener.
Ask whether any member objects to a single question being put on Amendments 85 to 87. No objection. Therefore, the question is that Amendments 85 to 87 are agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. The question now is that Section 21 be agreed. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. I now call Amendment 88 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 84. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally, Convener.
Thank you. The question, therefore, is that Amendment 88 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. The question is that Section 22 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. I now call Amendment 89 in the name of the Cabinet Secretary, already debated with Amendment 84. Cabinet Secretary to move formally.
Move formally,
Thank
Convener.
you. The question is then that Amendment 89 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. I now call Amendment 147 in the name of Malcolm Chisholm, grouped with other amendments as shown in the groupings. Malcolm Chisholm to move Amendment 147 and speak to all amendments in the group.
Thank you very much, Convener. Again, I've homed in on what was quite an important theme in stage one, which was the importance of locality arrangements. And I think we could refer to many points of the evidence where people said really a lot of the change that people wanted and expected would take place in localities and through the locality arrangements. And therefore, I was surprised on looking more carefully at the bill that there actually seemed to be very little reference to those locality arrangements. Section 32, which we'll come to later, does refer to consultation when it comes to certain changes in localities. But again, it's all at a very general level, and nobody reading the bill would really have any clue as to what particular, what was supposed to happen in those localities. And it seemed to me, therefore, that a minimal change that could be made would be to insert a subsection which suggested that regulations should set out the key principles of locality planning. I'm partly concerned that the bill as drafted could be interpreted quite differently with reference to locality arrangements. I suppose I'm partly influenced by the experience of community health partnerships, which were legislated for 10 years ago or so, because I think the intention there of those passing the legislation was that they should be rooted very firmly in communities, and yet we all know how many community health partnerships became local authority-wide structures. Now, I accept that the bill does have a minimal requirement that there should be at least 2 localities in each local authority area, but given the size of some local authorities, that's not saying a great deal. Moreover, just to say that there should be 2 doesn't say anything about what the relative powers and responsibilities of those areas should be as distinct from the integration board. So I do have a fear that a lot of the rhetoric of the bill is about locality arrangements and the involvement of a wide range of people, from health professionals to service users, in those localities, and yet it could be interpreted differently by integration boards if they wish to operate in a centralising manner. So it does seem to me that we do need to have a little bit more in the bill about the locality arrangements. I think this is a fairly minimalist arrangement because it's just saying that the principles should be in regulations, but clearly if they were in regulations that would allow Parliament to debate them and either approve them or ask for them to be amended.
Thank you. I now call on Nanette Millen to speak to Amendments 236 and other amendments in the group.
Yes,
Wait a minute, I think I'm jumped the gun there. And I'm, again, can I call on the Cabinet Secretary to speak to Amendment 90 and other amendments in the group?
Thank you, Convener. These amendments deal with the process of strategic planning. Malcolm Chisholm's 2 amendments, 147 and 201, highlight particularly the role of locality planning within strategic planning and would give Scottish ministers, subject to affirmative procedure, the power to set out the key principles of locality planning and regulation. I'm sure that the committee will agree that locality arrangements will be fundamental to the success of this agenda, as they are the sharp end of where health and social care services will be drawn together and delivered. Getting this right both within and out with the legislation is absolutely key. Over the course of the last 2 years, the Scottish Government has had extensive discussions with stakeholders about how best to reflect locality planning arrangements within the legislation. Not just planning arrangements, just general locality arrangements. The overwhelming response has been that we should require that they are established in every area of Scotland, that they are embedded within the strategic planning process, and that they involve the full range of local stakeholders in their establishment and operation. Other than these 3 key areas, the response has been that the rest of the arrangement should be left to guidance to allow local flexibility on how the localities should operate, underpinned by guidance. To prescribe these arrangements runs the risk of hampering local innovation, disengaging stakeholders from the start, creating unnecessary bureaucracy and creating arrangements that are unsuitable for the vast majority of localities in Scotland. Turning specifically to Mr Chisholm's amendments 147 and 201, I have considerable sympathy for the intention behind these amendments, but do not believe this is the best way to achieve the aim of strengthening the basis of locality planning. Firstly, the bill already contains principles that integration authorities must have regard to in the development of these arrangements, and I do not see that adding a second set of principles via regulation will add much to locality arrangements. Secondly, regulations are used for setting out the detail of arrangements that must be put in place, rather than a place to set principles that organisations must have regard to. That is why we have already established principles on the face of the bill that define how integration must be taken forward. Thirdly, stakeholders have been clear that they believe the most effective way of developing these arrangements is to provide flexibility underpinned with statutory guidance. The bill makes provision in section 41 to ensure that all statutory partners must have regard to the statutory guidance we produce. I intend to provide statutory guidance on locality planning that goes beyond just the setting of principles and considers far more in terms of the detail of how localities can be made to be successful. Finally, on Malcolm Chisholm's 2 amendments, the message has been clear from stakeholders that they should be left to make a success of locality arrangements in the way that suits them locally. I believe that this is the right thing to do. The bill sets out clear arrangements for annual reporting and, as noted within the policy statement for the regulation, this will include a duty to report on the success of locality arrangements, and I intend to hold integration authorities to account for this. I invite Malcolm Chisholm to withdraw amendments 147 and 201. Moving to my own amendments in this grouping, these focus on ensuring appropriately robust and flexible arrangements for strategic planning. Amendment 90 allows the Health Board and local authority to choose to delegate functions on a day that's earlier than the day that will be prescribed by the Scottish Ministers. Where this is done, the Integration Authority must make clear in the strategic plan the date when functions are to be delegated. This will ensure transparency and clarity as to when delegation will take place, and also allows for local flexibility where good progress and integration is being made. Amendment 91 requires the Integration Authority to have prepared a strategic plan before the functions can be delegated by the Health Board and local authority. This is important in order to ensure that services are planned and delivered in an integrated way. Amendment 92 removes the requirement to restrict the first strategic plan to a period of 3 years. As introduced, the bill requires the first strategic plan prepared by an integration authority to relate to the period of 3 years, beginning with the prescribed day on which integration begins. While the integration authority can plan for a longer period, the plan must be reviewed and revised at least every 3 years. If an integrated authority wishes to produce strategic plans covering a 5-year period, it can do so, but it will need to develop a new 5-year plan at least every 3 years. The strategic plan can and should be reviewed at any other period within that 3-year period, and if revised earlier than the end of the 3-year period, a new 3-year period will commence from the new start date. Amendment 92 responds to discussion with stakeholders that has led to the conclusion that restricting the strategic planning period to a maximum of 3 years is unnecessary and inconsistent with good practice in relation to commissioning and planning services. Amendment 93 removes the requirement for strategic plans following the first strategic plan to be prepared every 3 years before the anniversary of the day on which the integration began. Instead, Amendments 127 and 129 to be debated in Group 20 require the Integration Authority to keep the strategic plan under continual review and to establish a new strategic plan for a period of 3 years. Amendment 94 is a drafting amendment which provides for a definition of integration start date. This amendment provides the start of integration to be the date set out in the strategic plan or the prescribed date for integration authorities that are integration joint boards and lead agency. Amendment 116 makes it clear that Section 27 refers to the development of the strategic plan, and the strategic planning group is formed for that purpose. Amendment 118 is a technical change that updates the numbering of the section. Amendment 123 enables the Integration Joint Board to obtain relevant information from the Health Board and Local Authority for the purposes of preparing the strategic plan. Amendment 124 removes Section 28, which relates to the lead agency model. As at introduction, a lack of approval for the strategic plan under Section 28 requires the lead agency to modify the strategic plan, but does not prevent the lead agency from implementing the plan that has not been approved. To give the delegating agency a greater power over the strategic plan than that held by the lead agency would undermine the principle of delegation. The provision as it stands is therefore an unnecessary complication to the strategic planning process without benefit for patients or service users. Given that Amendment 124 removes Section 28, which relates to the lead agency model in its entirety, I ask Nanette Millen to withdraw Amendment 236. I can assure Nanette Millen, reassure her, that regulations will ensure the proper involvement of the third sector in strategic planning, and guidance will also be provided to support this. Amendment 125 requires the Integration Authority in a lead agency arrangement to publish the strategic plan as soon as practicable after the strategic plan has been finalised. This is the same requirement that applies to an integration authority in a body corporate arrangement. Amendment 126 simplifies Section 29. As a result of removing Section 28 via Amendment 124, it is no longer necessary to make different provision for different models of integration in relation to publication of strategic plans. Amendment 131 makes provision to require the Integration Authority to publish an annual financial statement on commencement of its first strategic plan and every year after that. In order to support transparency regarding use of the integrated budget, the financial statement must set out the total resources that the Integration Authority intends to allocate under the provisions of the strategic plan. I move Amendment 90, and I urge Malcolm Chisholm to withdraw Amendments 147 and 201, and Nanette Millen to withdraw Amendment 236.
Thank you, Cabinet Secretary. Call on Nanette Millen to speak to Amendment 236 and other amendments in the group.
Thank you, Convener. Amendment 236 is suggested as an approach to achieving third sector sign-off on the face of the bill, and that's why I've brought that forward. As we know, the third sector is a key partner alongside health boards and local authorities, and many stakeholders want to see its role clearly articulated in statutory guidance, as the Cabinet Secretary said, and secondary legislation, by seeking third sector sign-off of strategic plans prepared by the health and social care partnerships. The assertion is that the joint sign-off under Reshaping Care for Older People has enabled many areas to overcome barriers to partnership and has been a key driver for the cultural change that's widely acknowledged as the essential foundation for successful integration. And that's why I've brought that amendment forward. And I'll move it at this stage.
Thank you. Any other members? No. Cabinet Secretary?
Just to reassure Nanette Millen that I totally agree with her on the need for the third sector to be properly represented, and we will be providing that in the secondary legislation and guidance.
Chisholm to wind up and press withdraw.
I would listen with interest to what the Cabinet Secretary said. I think potentially there could have been a contradiction between his strong words about statutory guidance and his previous words about leaving everything to localities so that their innovation and was not curtailed. So I would want to look at that further, but and may well introduce some different wording at stage 3, but I would be prepared to withdraw my amendment at present.
Okay. Then can I now move to call amendments 90 to 94 all in the name of the Cabinet Secretary and all previously debated, and invite the Cabinet Secretary to move amendments 90 to 94 in block and ask...
Move on block, Convener.
Does any member object to those amendments being moved on block? No. Thank you. The question is then that amendments 90 to 94 are agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. The question now is that section 23 be agreed to. Are we all agreed? Yes. Thank you. That ends today's consideration of stage 2 of the bill. Thank you all for your patience and cooperation.